So deciding to do a video for Halloween meant that I had to obviously come up with a spooky movie or franchise to watch or talk about or find something in film that surrounds horror. So at first I was going to do a review of the Fear Street trilogy since I think it's a very good modern teen horror series, but then I decided to do a video on either John Carpenter, Sam Raimi or Wes Craven, my three favourite horror directors, but then I thought, never mind, I would do a video on either Scream, Creep or The Thing, being they're my favourite horror films. But in the end, none of them are even close to the standard of what movie came next into my brain. All these directors, all these franchises, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, Child's Play, it's all eclipsed by one movie. And that movie is 1999's Disney Channel original film, Don't Look Under the Bed, directed by Kenneth Johnson, director of such classics as 1977's The Incredible Hulk, Short Circuit 2, and Steel. Remember Steel? This film is so utterly batshit and insane. It's amazing this film even got made in the first place, to be honest. It's equally one of the worst films I have ever seen and one of the most impressive films I have ever seen, simply for the fact that it went this hard for a Disney Channel original film. So let's get into it and revisit one of my childhood horror classics. Okay, so we open up with some narration, as every revolutionary movie does. Blade Runner, Goodfellas, George of the Jungle is a staple of the classics. We find out that the town this film is set in is Middleburg, which I had to Google if it was real. It is. Our protagonist Frances then wakes up along with her family and they come to discover all the clocks had gone forward by 3 hours. Ooh. We move on and find out that this happened across town. We discover this through the help of our best friend character, Joanne. Now, Erin Chambers, who plays Frances, is actually quite decent. She's not amazing, but when compared to basically everybody else in this film, notably her best friend, she's your average Sigourney Weaver. Anyway, they go to school and we finally see our best character with some legitimately cool shots. We discover something is doing these pranks across town. They're generally harmless, so they're just kind of being a dick, like putting dogs on roofs or egging a teacher's car. So far this film is fine. It's a very standard Disney Channel film so far, but one thing to note is just there is a lot of Dutch angles in this thing. Like a lot. And I know it's to signify that something just isn't quite right, but they use it so often that it loses entire meaning a lot of the time, but it has big props for trying because that's more than basically any Disney Channel film does. Right, so we get some more narration explaining that these pranks are going wild and whoa, for free, my guy? We start to realise that all these pranks surround Frances, like her house were missing eggs and the teacher's car got egged. She joked about putting her brother's dog on the roof and now all the dogs are on the roofs of their houses and whatever. So she goes to school, we get this weirdly eerie shot of people standing still, which is just like, how fucking powerful is this menace? Like, he can mind control people? But this shot is actually good. There's no music and it cuts between Frances's face and the wide shot, and it's cool. It's a good little atmosphere, but the only problem is there isn't actually that many people in the shot, so they probably either should have gotten more people in the shot or just kept this scene to a close-up, because it kind of just looks like some goofy Doctor Who kind of thing, and I don't know if I'm on board or not. Right, so we go to school and everybody is blaming Frances for all these pranks when it's so obvious she's being framed. Like, why would she make it so obviously her as to not graffiti her locker out of all of them? Or how the fuck would she even pull off filling this entire swimming pool with jelly while people are there? It's kind of outrageous they think it's her, but then we move on to actually meeting the best character, who we find out is called Larry Houdini, played by Ty Hodges, and he's doing his best Chris Tucker impression to give this film some real semblance of life. He disappears and Fran embarrasses herself some more. The headmaster calls in Fran's mother to have a meeting about the pranks since they still believe she's the one behind it. Now this meeting is actually really important narratively because it sets up a few things. Firstly, it drops in that Fran's younger brother had leukemia, and her older brother donated bone marrow to him. It finalizes to Francis that nobody else can see Larry, and it also sets up the plot thread of the parents trying their best to help their daughter in a time of need, which leads to some of the better jokes in this film. So yeah, this teacher tries to blame Darwin's cancer for Francis's outbursts.
Well, it was just a theory.
A film theory, and
the parents have this conversation about how maybe she's being mind controlled or something, and we cut to Frances finding a shoe under her bed with the flowers from an earlier prank on them. Darwin comes in and tells her that some kids at the park were told by Larry that the boogeyman exists, and wait, what was that?
On all levels except physical, I am a wolf.
Fran goes to confront Larry, and we get some pretty dated VFX, but Larry keeps telling Francis the guy in his head is telling him to help Francis stop the boogeyman. He explains more that he's an imaginary friend, but because of the guy in his head, she can see him despite him only being seen by kids, because obviously only kids can see their imaginary friends normally. The guy in his head then tells him to go to the library to get a book, which he finds. It's a book on the boogeyman, and...
By who? By guy in head.
Okay, that's pretty funny. I can't even lie. Larry keeps fucking around with these kids and bullying this librarian, just trying to do her job, and they go back to Francis's house to read the Book of Boogie. They figure out how to defeat him, but as that happens, we find out, dun dun dun, Larry was Darwin's imaginary friend before Francis convinced him to stop believing in imaginary friends, and then we get the least intense argument of all time.
Safe!
Larry!
No, don't pretend with me, Fran. I know all about pretending.
But they can't stay mad at each other for more than 5 minutes because Larry hears the boogeyman on the roof and goes to like... kill him or something. He doesn't really have a plan, and I don't know what he actually thinks he's going to accomplish here other than getting murked, which happens. So this is a good time to mention that the practical effects in this film are pretty great. The small boogeyman teases, the eventual reveal with the costume and makeup, it all looks pretty amazing considering what this film was for. So we finally see the boogeyman, and yeah, he's pretty dope. He like rhymes a bunch for some reason, which is definitely unnecessary, but it is pretty fun and whimsical, I guess. Right, so turns out the boogeyman was lighting up Francis's house with Christmas lights as if Francis could do any of this in the time allotted, and she gets framed yet again. She finds Larry, who didn't die, and they make this device that can kill boogeymen. Something to note here, I love that the idea implied is that only children could understand how this machine works because they have imagination, but adults think too rationally, so they just wouldn't understand it. It's a funny little throwaway concept, but I do think it's a pretty interesting one. We then get this funny black and white Frankenstein homage scene, and man, this movie is trying. It is clear everyone in this film wants this to be good. They are trying so hard to make it good, and they basically succeed at what they're trying at. So Larry makes something called boogie goo with all the ingredients of a French soup.
Some rotten eggs, burnt sugar, jalapeno peppers, Limburger cheese, some anchovies, bacon grease, one of those guys, and your daily requirement of iron.
And we figure out that Larry has been turning into a boogeyman this whole time, so basically in this world, when children stop believing in imaginary friends too early, those friends turn into the boogeymen.
A little late for that, Fran.
Which is actually a unique concept. I liked this idea growing up, and I still think it's a pretty sick one now. But anyway, Darwin gets kidnapped and taken to Boogie World, which Francis and Larry enter to go and save Darwin, equipped with their boogie killing device. So again, the VFX horribly suck in this sequence, but then they build this whole practical set of under Francis's bed, and it looks incredible. Like, the effort that must have gone into this is amazing, and I really cannot fault this film for actually trying this much. They did something really brilliant here. They even ride a toy car into this world. How could you not like this? So then Larry is fighting his change, but then eventually succumbs to it, meaning he's full tilt boogie now, and god fucking damn, these effects are so good. They are so good. Like, this is some Evil Dead 2 level shit. Like, I don't know how this got greenlit for children at all. It's fucking terrifying. So everything gets super intense here, like actually, before Francis convinces Darwin to believe in Larry again, which restores him back to normal. He then fights the boogeyman with a fountain pen while Frances attempts to start up the device using a battery and paperclip under her bed. The creativity in this scene is engulfing. Like, if you didn't like this film before now, this is where you have to admit it's pretty cold. The boogeyman then says some questionable stuff.
Hate to be the one to tell you, but it's not too late for me to nail you.
What did he say?
And Francis gets everything working in the nick of time to defeat the boogeyman. They return back to the normal world and we get some more great comedy.
You didn't change the bag first.
Frances gets acquitted of her crimes. We find out the boogeyman was Frances's old imaginary friend, and they emphasize she wasn't a boogeyman, she was a boogie person 3 separate times. So if you think you're an ally of the LGBT community or a feminist, you ain't got shit on this film. The emotional payoff is nice because they let Frances know they'll never see her again because she doesn't need them, but then Larry kisses Frances and that's a bit weird. I'm not on board with it at all. Like, these two do not build any kind of romantic relationship, so it seems kind of out of nowhere. But honestly, the most unrealistic thing in this film, more than imaginary friends, boogie people, and this kiss, is that Frances's parents admit fault and apologize, which no parent has ever done, ever. We then cut to the credits and they play Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire. This is the greatest movie of all time. You cannot tell me different. But honestly, this film went way harder than necessary. The fact that half of this shit was approved for children is kind of insane, but overall it is a super low budget kids horror film, and for that it's near perfect. It's also really funny at times. It got some genuine, legitimate chuckles out of me, but I think honestly, this film has real potential for a solid adult horror film. Given a bigger budget, more license to add gore and whatnot, and then given to a director with experience of great camera techniques and practical designs and effects like Sam Raimi, this is a legit horror film. I respect it so much. It's a shame that Ty Hodges, who plays Larry, never went on to do much else after this film because he has real star power potential, more than everyone else in this cast. So with all that said, have you seen this film before? What did you think about it, and what did you think about this review? Please comment, because I want to talk about this film way more than I get to because nobody has seen it. And as always, keep watching scary movies. Happy Halloween.